A report on the state of the world's children was presented by the United Nations Children Education Fund, UNICEF, and it threw the spotlight on children with disabilities. The report was presented at the National Park Playground on Thursday amidst a steady downpour that had threatened to disrupt the proceedings. The venue was chosen because the Inner Wheel Club of Georgetown, along with UNICEF, had made some refurbishments to the play area to cater for persons with disabilities, and Chairman of the National Commission on Disability, Evelyn Hamilton, said Guyana has been implementing some of the recommendations of the report.
When I looked at the executive summary of this report, I really realized that many of the things we were doing in Guyana follow these recommendations. For example, one of the third key recommendations speaks to dismantle barriers to inclusion so that all children's environments, schools, health facilities, public transport, and so on, and I'm sure it includes play, facilitate access and encourage the participation of children with disabilities alongside their peers. This is exactly the kind of thing that recommendation is speaking to. And I think the Inner Wheel Club of Georgetown and all its partners, all its contributors, really deserve our thanks for not only their example, but for the hard work that they have done.
UNICEF representative for Guyana and Suriname, Suleiman Bremo, said the developing countries unfortunately have the highest number of persons living with disabilities.
The State of the World's report, which will be launched this morning, tells us that there are at least 1 billion people in the world with one disability or the other, based on the definition we just heard. At least 1 in 10, fully 10% of those 1 billion people are children. And 80% of those children with disabilities live in developing countries.
Minister of Education Priya Manekshan said that funding for several programs for vulnerable persons in society have been cut by international agencies because Guyana was now assessed as having the resources to do so on its own. She said the state and other stakeholders must live up to the expectations of those vulnerable groups in society.
It's incumbent on states, governments, and NGOs, everybody involved to change this circumstance for people living with disabilities around the world, and particularly for children living with disabilities. And that is why I believe today's report that we will launch shortly is timely. It is a good reminder to the world that we have a lot of work left to be done in the area of disabilities.
The role of UNICEF was highlighted by Ms. Henry of the Inner Wheel Club, whose motivation came from her organization's goal of securing a happier future and helping children around the world.
Other new features of the playground are the benab, the pathways and drinking water fountain with basins at 4 levels to provide comfortable access for children of varying heights and with a ramp to allow wheelchair access. Many of the new additions you see today were made possible with UNICEF funding. Our club is grateful to UNICEF, the National Commission on Disability, the Protected Areas Commission and the National Parks Commission for making this phase of our very large and ongoing dream a reality.
For Capital News, Roel Collins.